And you have Odysseus there. He's so smart. You telling me that he couldn't sneak a couple people on a rowboat to try for a little attack somewhere?
Would be
No,
appreciated,
again, underused.
but then they would have to figure out clever things for Odysseus to do, and they don't seem to be good at
Mm.
figuring out clever things for him.
Mm.
You didn't see in the director's cut when they go to find Odysseus, and he's like pretending to be a farmer who's just like, I fucking hate Odysseus. He drinks my wine, that asshole. And the guards that like came to like get him are like, you should respect your king, and then they just like walk off, and he's like, Agamemnon's people aren't very smart, are they? I'll serve. And it's just like, no, that's like he's supposed to be trying to not go. Like, for
Does a
one
little
thing.
bell kick and does a old shucks with his arm and skips on off. That's what I imagine.
Welcome to Certain POV's Another Pass podcast with Case and Sam, where we take another look at movies that we find fascinating but flawed. Let's see how we could have fixed them.
Hey everyone, and welcome back to the Another Pass podcast. I'm Case Aiken, and as always, I am joined by my co-host, Sam Alisea.
Hi.
Sam! I don't have a bit. Damn it.
Oh no.
Oh no.
I thought it was just that you had a bit that was so good that I was going to cringe. Like you're gonna really dig into some like Greek mythology nerd bag and just pull something out that was just going to like make me thought I had stared into the sun or flown too far to the
Right.
sun. What is it? What is it, Case? Come on. I believe in you.
Sam, we've been doing this show for a long time, right?
Yes.
I would say that we have been gaping into eternity and laying down enough of a record of our epic adventure on this show to continue on for all time. Wouldn't you say so?
Almost 10 years worth of adventure. Yes.
Yes, of oral tradition, you might say.
Indeed.
And so it's perfect that we are today talking about a movie that is theoretically adapted from something from oral tradition because
Very loosely.
very, very loosely, because today we are talking about the 2004 film Troy. And to have that conversation, we are joined by Vanessa Cominsky.
Hello, how are you?
I am doing
Oh,
great. It is so great to get you on. We have been friends for a long time now in the real world, which is kind of scary because it still feels like you're like my new coworker. But in retrospect, it's like it's been like 4 years.
Yeah, it has. It's so weird. I mean, I've been with Prestige LaDroit for 3.5 years, but we met during COVID,
That's
so
true. Yeah.
or started talking, being friends in COVID. So
Yeah. Yeah, so long tradition there as well. So yeah, so Vanessa is one of my coworkers from my day job, which is a wine and spirits
and
distributor.
beer.
Yes, and beer now. But the one of the areas where we bonded was that we are both, in fact, classics majors. And so we have talked about doing today's movie for a while because this is one I've always wanted to do with like another classics person because I well like I so I have a story that I'll get into when we're talking about the movie of like how I saw it that sort of like primed me to be like nostalgic for this movie specifically. But I was curious, like I wanted your perspective on it because you like look, if you have a background in classics, you have thoughts about the accuracy of the movie Troy and the act like before we even get into whether or not it's a good movie. And then you get into that whole conversation. That's going to be wild. I can't wait for this whole episode's worth of conversation. But so I'm really glad you're here. Is I guess the thing I'm trying to get to because you're awesome.
Me too. I Actually, this is even more funny because I based this big senior project on this movie. So, to date myself, I graduated from high school in 2006, and this movie came out in 2004. And we went to this Latin convention every year. I'm from Pittsburgh, and the University of Pennsylvania used to do this, or sorry, Penn State University. Apologies, wrong one. It's been quite a few years now. So we used to go to this Latin convention, and I really wanted to do a digital project because no one was doing those back then. And I wanted to do a Mystery Science Theater 2000 of this movie. And I couldn't make it physically work, but I did write the proposal and put it together as my project and watched this movie, unfortunately, so many times. So many times that I think even my parents were sick of it. My mom was like, "What is that dumb movie you're watching again?"
That's perfect. Yeah, because it's also it is a dumb movie. Like we should be clear about this
But
one.
it came out in a time where these kind of dumb movies were such a thing. So it's like you had this, you had Alexander, wasn't Alexander like the same year?
Yeah, it
Kingdom
was
of
like
Heaven,
yeah.
Yeah.
300, Gladiator, which was, I mean, a whole, like, I could unpack Gladiator for, that's like a top tier, always in the rotation movie for me.
Mhm. Yeah, no, well, and that's the thing. Gladiator is fantastic. Like you've got Gladiator, and then also the triple feature of the Lord of the Rings movies, kind of
Hmm.
relaunching like the epic sword and sandals kind of like genre, or at least like that sort of was an attempt at the time of sort of cashing in on this like epic movie kind of thing. I mean, like there even were those like parody movies that did like epic movies specifically.
Yes.
So it was certainly like in the air at the time. And then also like,
I mean, they walked so that Game of Thrones could run. I mean,
oh,
we
for
could
sure.
not
Then
have had
Crash.
Game of Thrones. Yeah. Yeah, Crash
Sorry.
definitely. I didn't even
That's just my own
watch.
bitterness. Sorry.
There
A
were
lot.
there were certain parts of it. I think I stopped watching. The Red Wedding was the last episode I watched. I said, "This is enough. I can't.
Oh wow.
I can't
Oh
do it
wow.
anymore." It's just
That's
that's
pretty
when
early on.
they took a hard left that season, and I loved the books, and I like watched that episode, and I was like, "It's not going to get any better. It's only going to get worse," and I just stopped.
Wow, that is some discipline right there, because that's when the show was still, fairly good.
Did it get better? No,
No,
it
yeah, I mean
just
you're
got worse.
correct. Like,
I stand by my decision. I tried to
yeah.
go back and rewatch, and I was like, no, I can't do it.
Well, that okay, so there's talking about the movie. There's a thing about this movie that it like it all sort of like clicked together when I was doing like cursory research about it. And that is when you think about the fact that this movie came out in 2004 and that it was written by David Benioff, who is one of the creators of the Game of Thrones TV show. And that sort of put all these like little puzzle pieces in place for this movie. And the thing that sort of like made it really click was I was thinking through characters and like whether or not I like them, because generally speaking, I like the cast of this movie, even though it is so fucking white. It is like ridiculously white for a conflict between between Greece and the Middle East.
The Hittites, the Hittites. I
Yeah,
mean, y'all, come on.
Yeah.
I know it is
Asia
incredibly white.
Minor, big time.
I know. Like it is. That you
Hey,
just
man, at least Hector had a tan.
yeah. It's a whitewashed movie, but I am fascinated by the cast, and I like the casting of Sean Bean as Odysseus. But it made me realize that I like the casting of him as Odysseus more so than I like the writing of Odysseus. And I think he's just very charming and I like him as an actor. And so I
Yeah.
got to the spot where I was like, oh, wait, actually, Odysseus is written really bad. And it occurred to me that Odysseus is written as this trickster who tells everyone that he has tricks and that he is in fact smart, but never does anything smart in this movie. And it's
Yeah.
exactly the way that Tyrion in the later seasons of Game of Thrones works, where he is supposed to be very clever and keeps telling people that he's clever, but never does anything clever in the entire goddamn show after they run out of material from George R. R. Martin to adapt. And that
Yeah.
piece right there is what made me see the matrix of this movie, where it's like, oh, this movie came out in 2004 and it is this attempt by what is this very like kind of like centrist liberal perspective on the world at the time and trying to have a treatise about it using a Middle Eastern conflict as the backdrop for everything, and wherein the powers controlling the stakes of war are the ones who are the bad guys in this piece, but the soldiers are in fact quite noble and heroic, and that we should support the troops in this whole scenario. And all of a sudden, I was like, and this movie just sort of like glitched out on me, and it now I can't unsee it.
No, no. Yeah, you're not wrong. It's oh man, that's such a political, like geopolitical, like of the time, 100%. And I mean, they filmed this movie primarily in Malta. which is interesting in and of itself. Malta has great film credit, I believe, but I think that this is right probably what 5 or 6 years before we started seeing like a very big push towards people of color actually playing roles of like of people of color, like,
Yeah,
and
while
it's
it was commented on, this wasn't like that wasn't the issue people had with this movie at the time.
no, there were so many other things. This movie gets lit up, and I troll some Reddit threads to be like, what do people say? Because to me, it's like this movie is a personal movie that I just really have enjoyed and have watched for both school and work and just whatever because it's I'm a simple person. People will ask me what's my favorite movie and I'm like, "Oh, I love Super Troopers." And they're like, "That's like the stupidest movie ever." I said, "Do you enjoy watching it?" "Yes." "Okay, great. That's why it's my favorite. It's funny every time."
I will say that I love Super Troopers so much. It was one of my hangover movies in college where you would
Ah,
just like put it on and just like let the DVD sit in there because you didn't have enough energy to get up off the couch.
yeah.
It was a fantastic movie and shot by Colgate alums, so that we were like super into that. For
Oh, that's awesome. I did not know that.
yeah,
But yeah, for me, Troy is it's would you say sandals
Sword and Sandals.
Sword and Sandals. I mean, as a classics major, this was just like fun, and you were just so excited to see this. As somebody who reads a lot of sci-fi and fantasy, and this is a genre that really had just been kind of relegated to like Ben-Hur and all of these wildly poorly like almost stage adaptations of movies for so long, and they were never big budget or like really great films up until like Gladiator. Like, that changed everything, and
Well, I'm going to
at
push
least
back on
for
you
that,
on the
for
big
me.
budget. Like, I mean, there's
Yeah.
movies like Cleopatra, which was like an infamous like financial
Oh yeah.
disaster. Like, there were big budgets on some of these movies. Like, it's just it was a different kind of budget, and it's like where the, like there were i-
Yeah.
impressive
It,
sets being made and stuff like
it was
that.
also also a different time and
Yes.
style of filmmaking. And
Yeah.
so I think maybe that's kind of where the misrepresentation comes because those movies actually did have a lot of funding behind them for the time. Like those were epic, like Spartacus. That was an epic film. Like it's not wasn't really. But I think that this is such a beautiful film. Like it's shot quite beautifully. This is like such a gorgeous film. And in fact, my favorite quote, because I did also look back in the time to see like what my favorite quote comes from the film critic. And I'm not going to quote the whole thing, and I don't even remember her name. I'm so sorry. But she wrote, "It's a beautiful film, as empty as the Trojan horse." It's
Damn.
Yeah.
like devoid of any characters or any emotion, but lovely to look at. And that is honestly the epitome of what this film is. It is a Trojan horse. This film is the Trojan horse. It does not match up with the storyline that really happens. They change everything. Some first three female characters are melded into one. You kind of just have like a guy who's a cousin who may not have been a cousin. Doesn't matter. Achilles hops out of the horse. Was he even there? We don't care. He's going to save a love. It doesn't matter because it's fun and because there's battle scenes and because there's blood and you're going to have fun. This is the Trojan horse of the story of Troy.
Yeah, it sneaks into the theaters being like, no, we're doing a sort of a family friendly, or at least like a less complicated version of the Trojan War story, hitting all the big beats. Like we will have to be very clear that this is not an adaptation of the Iliad per se. Like the Trojan War is represented only a portion of it in the Iliad itself, and that
Right?
a lot of the big beats that people know, such as the Trojan horse itself, isn't actually from the Iliad. So whether or not this is a solid adaptation of any one work, there's no one work for it to be adapted from, unless it was going to be a much more narrow story in what was being represented. So there's that. It it sneaks in being like, look at this classical piece that we're making in a way that is digestible to a modern audience at the time of 2004, that has like a little bit of like, and see how it sort of is similar to the politics of today, but at this period. And then is, again, just like kind of simple and kind of hollow. I think that this movie is like legitimately a C+ movie. Like I think that it is fine in so many areas. Like there are good scenes, there's some good choreography, there's like very pretty costumes, there's pretty people, and I like the casting of it. Even though again it's very whitewashed. Like Vanessa, you referenced like older movies feeling kind of like stage plays. And this sort of feels the casting side of it kind of feels like how you would approach it for like a Shakespearean piece. Like Brian Cox is fucking Agamemnon in this. Like
I
that's awesome.
mean, he's fucking Agamemnon. He's so Agamemnon-y.
Brendan Gleeson, it's been Menelaus. Like we're talking about some excellent actors, even though they are so fucking white. But from a like if you're doing like the Shakespearean production of Troy, like that feels like actors that you would grab for it, right?
I mean, Brian Cox is perfect. I stand by him as Agamemnon just because I think that I couldn't think of anybody else that I would want to cast as Agamemnon personally. Some other people I would like to recast in this movie to be discussed later, but
Sure. But I mean, like we also have to remember that like if one of those is Brad Pitt, like Brad Pitt is like the marketing push of this movie. So it's
100%.
yeah. So
Clearly, he's the reason that's made the movie. We stay with him pretty much forever. He is. They could have called this like Healy's Goes to War, and like that would have been appropriate because we spend most of our time with him.
I 100% agree. If they had just called this movie The Wrath of Achilles, full stop, that was it. That's my big change. Like it would have made a lot more sense.
yeah, and like I mean, Brad Pitt at the time, I think everyone was saying this is perfect choice for Achilles. He's so he was super hot at the time, like
Dreamy.
literally and like or rather figuratively in the like aesthetic sense, but also like in terms of like popularity. Like this is coming off of like the peak popularity of like Fight Club era Brad Pitt. Like so cool. Like people really thought that this was like a great casting choice. And now from the standpoint of like Achilles is supposed to be like the youngest of the warlords, like so maybe that part doesn't quite work. But aside from that, he's a good looking dude who has this sort of like semi-divine kind of appearance to him. Like he's just like so perfect. Like it's ridiculous, and thus it's sort of makes sense for this like this design of Achilles that they had sort of conceived of. Yeah, just like I said, a really solid cast. So I saw this movie in Rome. Like I was on my like summer like Latin trip with my classics group, and so we were in Rome itself when the movie came out, and we just went to go see it because like most American movies are American movies with subtitles in Italy, or rather not most American movies are available to see in theaters. They have plenty of other movies that are Italian movies to see, but most major American movies you can find pretty easily, and it's just with subtitles. So we just saw it and it was fine. That's how I saw this movie, and it like I was like spending my days at like the Republic Forum, like amidst all these like ruins and like super, just like super feeling the whole like classical world kind of side of things. And like, yeah, this movie is about a dramatically different culture than Rome, but like it's all kind of like glossed over in the way that history sort of shrinks things as you go back. Like the whole Egypt look to us appears to be exactly the same, even though it's 6,000 years of tradition. There were ancient Egyptian archaeologists, and by that I mean in ancient Egypt there were archaeologists who studied ancient Egypt because that's how ancient Egypt was. Like
Right.
history has a way of looking smaller in our perspective, and so like me being there and taking in the span of eternity, like looking back, it's like 2,000 years ago these buildings were in the active use, and like this is where these hugely important things were happening. And then I go see this movie that is also all about like navel gazing at eternity, and I'm like, yeah, fuck yeah. Like, I really enjoyed this movie, and I actually will maintain that like it's one of those movies that I likewise do really enjoy. It's not like great, and like even at the time I was like it's objectively not great, but like I couldn't stop thinking about how I would do the Aeneid as a spin-off movie for this one. Like thought it was like perfectly set up with a very interesting cast at the end, where it's just like, oh, we've got Paris and Helen with them, and like there's no like that could be an interesting story if they're included in the like how you adapt the Aeneid and the like. I should note I wrote my thesis on the Aeneid, and so I was thinking about the Aeneid a lot these days. So like
Surprising. Go on.
yeah,
Shocking to the listeners. They are shocked in this moment.
so I spent the majority of my junior
Shocked.
year of college trying to push for me to be allowed to write a screenplay adaptation of the Aeneid as what I was going to do for my thesis, and that ended up not being what happened. But that was my like big push like, at the period, and I really wanted it to be a spin-off of this so I could like use it as a spec script to like go on and like become a Hollywood writer. So anyway, the point is that this movie was exciting to me and that like it filled me with like thoughts of like what you could do with in terms of adapting like classical pieces to like blockbuster popcorn kind of movies. And so in that regard, like there's some cool stuff going on in here. On the other hand, it's blunt and like kind of dumb and like a little tame in the theatrical cut. In the director's cut, it is a bit gorier in a way that is a bit more consistent with like epic movies of the time, especially, like I'm thinking of like your Bravehearts. And I think that there was an area where audiences wanted some of that. That was a big criticism at the time, that it was like kind of sanitized. Like the armies are very CG expanded, like they're taking people and footage of people and duplicating, like they're like cutting, copy pasting the same person like a lot of times to like create these like huge armies that they have. And it would be kind of beneficial to like get down into the actual like inner shots and not just like these big sweeping shots of the quote unquote 50,000 men. So that would be appreciated. That said, the director's cut goes too far in some areas. So I was watching the movie, and there's a spot like when they're doing the storming of the beach scene. There's the spot where Agamemnon goes, "What's he going to do? Storm the beach with 50 men?" And I'm like, "Oh, that's an interesting thing to like give a very solid number of how many people are on the boat." Like that, okay, cool. There are 50 men on this boat, and the beach scene happens where the boat arrives and they get pelted with arrows, and I started counting how many people go down, and it's like 17, and I'm like, that's a big chunk of that ship. Like that's logistically going to make things difficult for them if that's how many people they lost. And so there's probably spots where the director's cut goes a little too far in terms of like let's have a lot of people, like a lot of blood and gore in some spots, to the point where it kind of just becomes like you become inured to it.
Gratuitous.
Yeah, it's gratuitous in that regard, but it's like I think there's somewhere meeting in the middle is like on the gore factor of this movie. It's a little too clean in the theatrical cut. It's probably too much in the director's, and like I said, somewhere sort of in the middle.
Yeah, the level of action in the theatrical is, I kind of agree. I would like to see a little bit more kind of close-up shots like you see in the first like pitched battle where, Hector's running through and then he's like the Ajax fight. Like you only really see those like main character fights, but everything is kind of milling about around them. I also just want to bring in there are only like two inaccuracies. One of the big inaccuracies that I really didn't enjoy, other than Paris and Helen, like just waltzing off to
Mhm.
apparently go found Rome with Aeneas,
Yeah.
definitely didn't happen. Is the fact that Ajax dies. Like he dies by Hector's sword, and he does not die after Achilles, which all of this was like, that was like one of those plot points that just didn't need to happen there. And I just don't understand why they did it.
Yeah, well, my assessment is that Ajax in this movie is, I mean, for one thing, there's only one Ajax.
Yeah, there were two Ajax.
Yeah,
Agi? Ajax. I don't remember. I actually don't know how you pluralize that in Latin.
that's a good question. I mean, but
I
it's
think it would
Greek.
just be Ajax.
Yeah.
No, but it would have been the same in Latin, which is kind of where we would be talking about it because we're really going to get into the Greek of it. Just changes pronunciation for Ajax, I think.
Well, anyway,
Sorry, Sam.
No, it's fine. It's
my
fine.
the
Out
point
of
I was getting
politics.
at is that I feel that Ajax was set up to be the Greek equivalent to Boagrius, the soldier that Achilles fights at the beginning of
Oh
the movie,
yeah.
and that because like the thing that this movie does actually really well, I think, is the juxtaposition of Achilles and Hector as the two sort of heroes of the respective sides of the war. I think that's cool, and I think this is one of those spots where they are deliberately showing a similar confrontation between the two of them and how they would handle it respectively. Like that Achilles just moves through it and is so efficient at it versus the way that Hector actually has to really try. Like the Hector fight with Ajax is a good fight. Like it's really cool when he like smashes the shield, but he like just barely gets the shield up in time, and like this, it's like this cool like war axe or war hammer thing that it just feels like a big fucking caveman that he's fighting with, and he stabs him with the spear and he breaks off the spear. Like Ajax breaks the spear off and uses the pole of the spear to beat Hector with it. Like cool shots, like very cool things. Again, this movie has some very cool fight scenes in it, but like it's a much harder fight for Hector. And so that's just to be like, yeah, no, Hector is the second best soldier, but he's the second best compared to Achilles.
There's a lot in between him and Achilles, for real.
And again, they're so like I find this movie fascinating because the main villain, as far as I can tell, is Agamemnon.
100%. He's the big
he's a
bad.
warmonger.
Right,
he's just like, yeah, everyone else wants peace. Everyone else is like, oh my God, I'm too good. Like, I just love people, and like, I just want to be good, and I like to fight, but like, I just want to do it in my own time. And then Agamemnon's like, no, true, I must fight so I can rule the world. With Sauron. Basically, that's one ship to rule them all.
Yeah,
the owner of all the kings.
Yeah, like Agamemnon is clearly supposed to be U.S. imperialism in this era from the perspective of like the warlords in charge in this whole situation, and is thus the bad guy, like invading, not necessarily, in this scenario represented as heroic figures. Like there is nothing about Troy that is villainous aside from the fact that they take Helen, and that is the one like sort of like failing that they have. Everything else seems to be like, oh, Troy's dope. Like everything is great about Troy. And
Super
so
nice.
I find it fascinating that it's a movie where like the viewpoint still is mostly from the Greeks' perspective, because Achilles is really the main character. So the perspective of this whole thing is, it's just fascinating to me, because I can't tell how much of that is intentional versus accidental versus like a little simplistic. Like it's an interesting thing to do in a movie, to have the main character be part of the bad guy's side, and to sort of know it, and, and to sort of and still be a part of it all, and to play it that way. I find it fascinating.
Okay, I think I agree. Agamemnon's all of the little asides he has, the snipes, like at the funeral, this boy has just won this war for us, or whatever he says, like about Achilles rejoining the war after Patroclus's death, and like his comment, the conversation with him and Menelaus, like right before the fight with Paris about do what you must or whatever. He's like magnanimously evil, but and super self-centered. Like you just packed every bad thing into this one dude. Like he has zero redeemable qualities. Like I mean, if we got into like the myths and like the legends, like this dude sacrificed his daughter in one, two, or three different versions to be able to sail to Troy. Like, and then he comes back and is supposed to come back and get killed by his wife or his wife lover. I mean, you like robbed us of the Oresteia. Like, I'm deeply upset about that. I mean, that's like the ultimate like revenge. Oh, so many layers of antiquity.
Yes, this movie does not care anything for the majority of the tradition of the actual of anything that happens in this.
I mean, Paris is so whiny. Can we talk about how whiny Paris is?
Paris is supposed to be a little bitch, though. He really is supposed to be a little bitch.
But in some of the myths, but Paris grew up raising horses. He didn't even grow up in the palace. Like, he is a dick, but he's not actually a little bitch. Like, he actually is like genuinely decent shot. He is a genuinely decent soldier. He's just self-centered. He's just a dick. Like, that's like, but like he is so like, oh my God, I can't do anything like ever. Like Paris is an asshole because he's self-centered, but he was being murdered as a child, sent away, raised by someone else, and he comes back strong, and everyone's like, beautiful, let's just forgive him, even though he's supposed to bring down the whole nation of Troy.
All of it.
Okay. It's like I just needed him to be more charming to understand why a whole nation would be like, his cursed child should live. That's all
Yeah,
I'm saying.
yeah. I mean,
Too
it is
whiny.
they're putting a lot of work into having Orlando Bloom be Paris.
Yes.
Like
Yes.
really trying to be like he was really good as Legolas, right? Like
It was the wig, guys. It was all the wig. Like, I was doing a lot of the heavy lifting.
well, and
Oh,
wait, this is I think when was the first Pirates of the Caribbean?
Oh,
oh, I don't.
2001?
2003. So this is after Pirates of the Caribbean. So like they're setting him up to be a leading man at this point. And so the
Oh,
having
this was
him
a role to show his depth, quote unquote depth of of acting, but he's been on record as saying he blanked this entire movie out of his mind. Like he doesn't think about it.
I I don't doubt that. Although that's the one thing that is surprising is he did get a chance to work with Peter O'Toole, which you would think would be like,
Yeah.
oh, that was a cool moment in my existence when I played his son. Like,
Yeah.
so I think they're using Orlando Bloom's charm a lot to make Paris like work, and I think the problem is that like they hadn't realized that Orlando Bloom is a good actor and like and is clearly a star, but he he's not that charming. Like he's not so charming that you see him as like the realm's delight or some
Yeah.
situation like
There had to be something a little more roguish about him. He almost has like an innocence about him as Paris, and he needed to be like more ladies' man, more roguish, but still able to manipulate a family into believing, like excusing him. He's the guy in your family that your parents always make excuses about, and you're like, no, but he's a dick. And you're like, no, no, no. He's so pretty. He's so nice. Like, it's funny when he says stuff like that. That's who Paris is. He's so beautiful. He's not like, oh, it's like that 30 Rock where like John Hamm was in 30 Rock and it was like he was so pretty, but he was so dumb. And then like he became a doctor just because he was so pretty, but he was so dumb. Like that's who Paris is. And stuff. Because he's so beautiful. And they're just like, okay, that's my Aphrodite. Like his opponent, right? Like I mean, not in this movie, but like he's beautiful. People just hand him shit. Like, and Orlando Bloom doesn't have that swagger charm to him. Not that he's, if there's someone on the internet that still loves him and thinks he's very beautiful, I'm very sorry. I just mean he doesn't have that charm. He doesn't have that unknowable quantity that a rogue would have, a wraith,
Ooh,
if you will.
I haven't heard that since the last Regency audiobook I read slash listened to. Ah, gave me
yeah,
a
that's true. He doesn't quite have that roguish charm, and they write out the interesting backstory. And I will say, I don't know if I need the backstory, but I think the backstory helps establish the character as being more competent and uh, just like an interesting hero in his own right, or at least like has like an interesting story behind him. And in this movie, he's just sort of set up as this like petulant child of a prince.
yes, he's written into this movie exactly how they wanted him to be, I think, portrayed. I think Eric Bana is like the glorious older brother that has got it all, figured it out, whatever. And he is constantly putting up with his dipshit little brother doing dipshit things.
Yeah.
In the myth, yes, he is different. Like I totally agree. But I think that they wrote him into this story into this movie a very specific way. And they were like, all right, Orlando Bloom, we're gonna have you crawl on your knees to beg for your big brother to save you from the big bad Menelaus. And that was like,
Yeah.
oh God, full cringe.
Hmm.
And then Helen being like, "Oh baby, it's okay. You're not dead." I'm like, that's the most that's not grief. This is the time where you died by 40, guys. Like life expectancy was real low. Like you went out with a bang or you probably got the plague. So I'm like,
Yeah.
she would not have been like, oh no, you're good. It's okay. You came back
Yeah,
alive.
she
She'd have
would.
been like, get back
Well,
out there.
I think this gets
Go
into
spank yourself a Menelaus.
well, I think this gets into a problem that this movie has, which is that Agamemnon is specifically the bad guy of this movie, and it is not enough of the rest of the Greeks, and that includes Menelaus. Like, I think that the director's cut makes Menelaus seem like a worse husband, and I think that's a strength of the director's cut. They have like more of him being like kind of shitty during the party with the Trojans at the beginning of the movie. And I think that like the fact that Helen is so cool with Paris being a whiny bitch and like, crying for his brother to save him is because Menelaus is bad. But in the theatrical cut, it's actually pretty quick, and you're just sort of like, oh, well, I guess they had an unhappy marriage, but you don't really see that much about why, except for like how he reacts when she leaves him.
Yeah, and her like she has some anecdotes. Like she'll be like, I was a ghost, but they don't really set it up.
Right.
But it's not like she probably didn't get. I don't know. Well, I don't know. I'm not gonna say that she wasn't. It wasn't that bad for her, but
I mean, like, definitely, I think this movie wants to portray her very innocently. They want her to just be this beautiful person who is a young bride who finally found the love of her life, who happens to be a petulant little bitch of a prince from Troy, who helps her escape her husband, all of that stuff. It doesn't bring up any of the more complicated stuff, you know, written in stories that, leaving behind a child, that her marriage is probably fine, that she picked Menelaus because he was beautiful and the most handsome of her suitors. And he's always portrayed as an ugly older man. There's a lot of stories that portray her as just kind of really vain, but that's not what this movie wants. This movie wants a pretty young, innocent ingenue with a terrible husband who's whisked away by her young lover who is kind and soft. And that's why he comes off as a little bit of a weakling in this film, because he's got to be kind and sweet and ready to die for love, but not so ready that he doesn't want his big brother to step in for him. It's really interesting. And I'm wondering if that's just because it's like Western markets kind of thing, or, they're updating it for us,
Yeah. Yeah. There's so
Yay.
many like interesting tidbits about characters in this movie that they could have really explored. Like, the like I said, the juxtaposition between Hector and Achilles is really good, but also what would have been really interesting to explore is the juxtaposition of Hector and Paris with Agamemnon and Menelaus as like the two brother sort of sides of this war, especially with Hector as the like
Mhm.
leader of the Trojan army, so like kind of the face of the actual Trojan defense. It's just stuff that they didn't do enough of because there is in both scenarios the younger brother going to the older brother for help, and like we could be doing scenes to sort of like set up that difference between them, but I think this movie doesn't do enough of it
Mhm.
because it's again just not the smartest version of the story.
I mean, it's also just Achilles' movie. We don't want to take time away from him.
mm-hmm.
What are we going to do? We want to see Brad Pitt. What is Brad Pitt? Ace? Vic?
Needs more man
Yeah,
thighs.
well, that is a note
Yeah.
I have, which this movie should be gayer, like
Oh, agreed.
100% should be gayer.
100%.
And I will say that I think that the director's cut goes in a better direction for that because it's not. So I don't think that the director's cut is gratuitous in terms of its nudity, but it does actually have nudity, whereas the theatrical cut is shockingly chaste. Like there is one shot at the beginning of the movie when Brad Pitt has like the multiple women, but they are so blurred that you can't even really sort of see the boobs that are in the shot. But in the director's cut, they also have a lot more like almost see his dick shots. And I think that that's a good choice. I think that that is a thing that this movie needs more of. Like
The pottery, guys. The fucking pottery had dicks on it. Like we were not.
Yeah.
The Greeks were not afraid of the human body. Like I think that I think
Yeah, there
we've come a long
there should
way
have been
and
most
gone back so far.
there should have been more people walking around like the tent area, like away from war, just walking around kind of nude or ready to like, take a tip. They should just, when they're in camp, just hanging out.
yeah,
I
No.
thought the costumes for this movie still are some of my absolute like this is one of my favorite costume movies, and they were nominated, and I get it, but like the level of detail of like the difference between all the Greek leaders and even the soldiers, but like the big difference between that's one thing I think they did do kind of
Yeah, they
right.
did that really well.
Yeah, like the Trojan style of dress is markedly different. It's
Yeah.
definitely a little bit more Asiatic.
Mm-hmm.
You can actually see like Helen in like a traditional chiton or chiton, or I never actually know how do you actually say it, and versus like the dresses that the women wear in Troy, like it's kind of really like you see a lot of abs, at least like in the low slung, like everything is very much, you can see that the costumes are very based on the pottery of the age. And I think
Mm-hmm.
that is one thing that I can shit on this movie for a lot of things, but the costumes, I'm like, I would fight. I would throw hands.
Yeah, I mean, they're certainly like designed like they're the cool versions of all these things. Like they we're not looking for like for it to be super historically accurate, but it looks really good and it looks distinct and like it tells the story that they're going for.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, again, like strong points about this movie and the look of it. The look of the costumes is a big one. I find that the armors are really cool looking. Like they are not, they're nominally like close enough to realistic, but like they have this style that is like, yeah, they're like this looks badass on screen in 2004, like the version of that.
Yeah. I think I definitely do agree, Sam. Like, I think that there should have been much more like reality in the camp.
I just like,
Nobody
and
would have been wearing pants.
Mhm.
it wouldn't have had to be like overtly sexual either. You just like,
No.
hey, he's just walking by and like some slut is
Yeah.
just there. Like it's fine. Like they're just there needed to be like, I don't know. I think it just would have been a lot more fun. Give us a real sense of the war. Also, can we just talk about, like, I know it's a movie and I know it's really hard to do a delineation of time unless you like
Oh, yes,
specifically like
thank
note
you,
it.
God. Yes, of
Like
course we're talking about
this
this.
like
Such
like it
bullshit.
happened in like a month, I guess, like maybe like or 2 weeks. Like it was like the shortest war ever. And what's so really, because I think, one of the things about this story is that yes, it's adapted from a lot of different stories and things like that. But the whole mythos of this whole Trojan War is that it was a long lasting, drawn out war with many conflicts, and I know
It
that we
infamously
can't
10
put
years.
that
10
off.
years is like
10
specifically
years.
the number that is given
Yeah.
everywhere. And so they do kind of address this in the director's cut. Not well, but they do kind of, which is that they constantly say Troy is defensible for 10 years. They keep on saying that its walls could survive a 10-year siege. I think it's like 4 or 5 times where it like comes up where it's like we could be here for 10 years on the outside of their walls. Like they like keep saying it over and over again.
Right. But
Again,
that's not enough to
it's not enough, and it's not in the theatrical cut at all. Like it's completely gone.
And so it feels like, because in the theatrical cut, it just feels like it's happening all so fast. Like you're like, okay, and then this happened, and then this happened. It's like a really hyper grader learned everything about the Trojan War and then speed ran you through it.
And
And you're like,
hey, Sam,
Randall got there.
guess what?
Yeah.
That's a problem with the last 2 seasons of Game of Thrones too. Like again,
Yes.
this being a David Benioff script makes so much sense. Like no one knew who he was at the time when this movie came out. So no one knew to like be like, "Oh, well that's a David Benioff thing." But we have a very big body of work to reference now.
Yeah, for
He
sure.
he literally said he didn't want to put any like little like Troy 1100 BC June in anything, and he wanted it to just flow. I'm like, the
Well, I'm
fuck?
sorry because
How
in
it
the
would
edit
take
that is
them?
not how it ended up because we have that fucking super long chunk of expository text at the beginning before we get the Sean Bean voiceover and then we get like the establishing shot of the movie.
Yeah, I think, and this is
Ah.
possibly part of my pitch, but I think, one of the things that may have fixed it is like actually have a council meeting and just have the actors have a conversation about how long they've fucking been there and about provisions, which is very much a wartime thing that would happen. You can actually put in some like actual, you can put in more time of having the, you can even fix it with the actual conversation with Agamemnon has with Odysseus at the moment that Menelaus dies, right? Like where he's like, we should go back because the dead man doesn't need his wife. There, in his own right, he could have put some time in there. He'd be like, it's 5 years already. It would already take the audience to be like, oh shit, it's been 5 years, but
Yeah.
at least we would have known that there's been a large passage
Context
of
Yeah.
time, and we could have had John Bean, who is amazing at giving us multiple sentences in a row, let's know the exposition. Like, it has been 5 years, and that his men want to go home, that he hasn't seen his wife, that everyone would like to go home. No one cares about Helen anymore, or everything else, and Menelaus is dead, and we please go home. And Agamemnon could have still been the big bad, and he could have still been like, no, bitch, because I said so, would have stayed, and you would have understood even more so the thing. And like later on, when Achilles is talking to his men and sending them off, could have said to them, no, you've served me long enough. 10 years in this land is too long. Go now. Also would have given us a frame of reference of how long he's been there.
Also, it would make the whole scene where after they like first storm the beach and they have to like go and they all pay tribute to Agamemnon and he's like, tomorrow we'll be doing this in Troy. Tomorrow we'll be doing this in Troy. Like that's supposed to be because it's going to take them 10 years. Like that, it doesn't make sense in this like current scene where it's like,
No.
oh, it takes them like 2 weeks for this war. Like whatever.
No, it wasn't like, it just like, it was, I hated it when I was in the movie theaters, and I didn't like it again when I rewatched it.
Yeah. So
Like, I was like, damn it, this just feels like it's just a week or a month of time. Like, it does not feel like there's been a long passage of time.
yeah, it's barely a
Helen
fortnight.
was holding a baby at one point, wasn't she? But it was someone else's
Who?
baby. She was just holding a baby during the funeral, but I think it was Hector's child.
It was Asenath. Yeah,
Hmm.
it was because Andromache was holding the leaves. Okay, so I'm wondering. So here's the thing: is he writing thinking that people understand that this is a 10-year long war, or is he literally writing to condense this entire thing into a month long, about a, let's say on the broadside, 6 week long siege?
I don't think that David Benioff is able to conceive of events that are this like level of multi-stage with, and thus condenses all of the events in such a way where it's like that seems like the logical framing of a war to him. Like there's so much additional context to what is part of a war that is missing from this movie that it just feels like envisioning of what war itself is broken in this movie. It's a siege of a city, and the entire perspective is just like beach versus wall. And I'll go into more of that in a second. But like, I'm not trying to just be like too mean about it because again, like he wrote it, but like, you know, Wolfgang Peterson directed it. And Wolfgang Peterson is a great director. Like this is not like necessarily a thing that shouldn't have been saved somewhere else in the whole process. Like someone should have conceived of like, well, but what we have on screen isn't a war. It is a battle. It is literally a battle. Like even though that there are multiple nights, it is a battle that takes several days. But it is just one battle that ends in the taking of a city. That is not a war. This is the Battle of Troy right here. The fact that there's the second phase of it after they do the funeral games, like that's fine if you really want to call it two battles and be pedantic, that's fine. But like it's not seeing this from the perspective of like it is supposed to be a war, and like what does Troy fucking look like in this movie? Like and so
Yeah.
it's a siege of a city. Okay, so in the Iliad, by the time that we are at the Iliad, all of the surrounding structures outside of the walls of the city have been either destroyed or taken over by the Greeks. It's should be basically a no man's land for it, which means that outside of the walls of Troy there is a city, which makes sense because you would have that people would build buildings outside of it. Like so cities also, generally speaking, are, somewhat circular in shape, or they're, usually they're built along waterways. They mentioned that there's a river right there that leads to Mount Ida, so like you would think that there's a river on the backside of Troy. Troy has a shape to it. It's not just a flat wall facing the coast that that has no like docks.
If you watch this movie, you would
Right,
think it
that has
was.
no docks
Yeah.
or anything that like allow for the shipper for people to like set sail from the coast. Like I don't we have no like logic to how anyone like how the maritime functioning of Troy works. And that's assuming that you only think of it in this like one unidirectional kind of perspective, because I have a note in here where it's like they treat this like it's the fucking wall in Game of Thrones, and it's not, David. like like it's so unidirectional. Like the siege should be around the city, and there should be stuff that actually happens in this all, which is why it would make sense for it to be a war, because there would be constant like back and forth on this whole siege that occurs in it, and it doesn't fucking happen in this movie. Like the Greeks are positioned on one side outside of it. Like why can't the Trojans leave? Do they only have one door? Is that the problem about their walls? What's going on here? How did you get here? Well,
Is
we
it
we never
is it Gondor?
I mean, we never established that there is any Greek presence on the surrounding of the actual city of Troy. Like, as far as we can tell, they are set up on the beaches, and like the Trojans could
Mhm.
have theoretically fled. Apparently, they have tunnels that just like take them out, and it's fine, and no one would find them. And I was like looking down that tunnel when they see the shot, and I was like, what is actually like in there? Like, is it supposed to be just like some sort of weird passageway? Because it kind of looks like an alleyway kind of like set that they use. I don't know. Anyway,
It was a
it's
choice.
yeah. So
That's a choice.
because also when we see shots of the city in the movie, like I can't make out the geography of it. The only major detail is that like I think I think the palace is at the top of this of the hill of the city, or is that the temple? I couldn't quite
Mhm.
tell.
No, that's the palace.
Yeah, is it the
Yes, the
palace there?
And
palace.
the temple. The palace and the temple of all the gods, I think.
Yeah, I mean, it could also, yeah, it could be very well like a condensed kind of thing. Since I I find it interesting the themes of the gods in this movie. We'll put a pin in that and come back to it. But the actual like layout of Troy, I couldn't make heads or tails of the geography. Like like if you're gonna have like the sacking of the city matter, like you should have a sense of like what is actually happening to the city. Like there's a couple like pretty shots of like streets to sort of be like look at this like opulent like wonder, this jewel of the east in this ancient time, like they sell like the like, oh, isn't it sad that the city is gone, but they don't really like, they don't do enough to be like this is a living thriving city that has like reasons to be here, because kind of going back to your point earlier, Vanessa, it does have like that stage play quality to it.
I still stand by this movie should have been titled The Wrath of
Yeah.
Achilles.
Mhm.
And we should have just not given a shit about Troy and just been like, the reason why we're here, set up. The whole first part could have been condensed. And then we could just have battle, death, death. Okay,
I
cool.
want to
Wrath
hear
of Achilles.
more about that in the next half of the show.
Okay, yeah, sorry. I'm getting ahead. I'm getting ahead. But I
Let's
think
discuss
like
the gods. Sorry,
Okay.
no, wait, I didn't mean to cut you guys off, Vanessa. Keep going.
No, I think that the reason why Troy it like you said, the entire almost three-quarters of the movie is shot from the viewpoint of the Greeks and Achaeans outside the walls. So like but the Greeks are supposed to be the bad guys and the Trojans are supposed to be quote unquote the good guys. So it's just this whole thing is like flip-flop. Like it doesn't make sense. Like who are you fight? Like if this was a story about the Trojans and the siege and the plight of the Trojans, we would have had so much more interior dialogue and so much more interior of Troy,
Hmm.
but we don't because the story really is about Achilles.
Yeah.
Like this is supposed to be, but then there's almost like too much side context. Like they're trying to get into so many other reasons why do we feel sorry for Hector? Like, why should we feel sorry for Hector if the story is about Achilles and his pain and his wrath and whatever? Hector was a good dude. Yeah, but for the context of the story, is it to make it so that Achilles is redeemable because he gives the body back to Priam after Priam comes and begs him for it? Like, do we need all the context that we got for the Trojans to make Achilles' storyline work? Because I think that they almost tried too hard to include too much stuff when the story was really just should have been about Achilles.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, especially because if you frame it like if this is and it is, more focused on the Iliad than anything else, like it's not
For a story that's called Troy, we should have been in Troy.
right.
Like you're saying, like, why do we feel bad about sacking Troy when we spent the entire first 75% of the movie with the Greeks?
Yeah, the only major characters we care about on the Trojan side are all the royal family or their immediate advisors, and those immediate advisors barely have like roles. Like I was thinking about this, like how crazy of a casting choice is James Cosmo as like
No,
as like the general of the Trojan armies, and he does
Zendaya.
nothing in this movie in either cut of the movie. Like he's just a yes man to
Hector.
Hector and to Priam, and then he has like a little bit of a cool speech where it's just like I say that, or I suggest we make the boatmen wait a little longer, and it's like cool, yeah, it's like fun that we have without a doubt the best character from Braveheart in Troy, like that's fun, but like it's just a weird like big person to have in this movie. And like Peter O'Toole as Priam is a big casting choice for this movie. Like they're trying to like really be like, oh, we've got the best fucking cast for it. And I think you're right, Vanessa, that this movie is bigger than what it really was meant to be.
Somebody's budget got out of hand, and they figured out that they couldn't have trilogy, and then we got Troy. I think I think someone went and pitched this and they were like, "Yo, we're gonna make this big 3-part movie. It's gonna be 10 years of the siege of Troy, blah blah blah. Everyone, all these cool people. This is who we're gonna cast. They're already in. They're so excited. We're gonna get Brad Pitt. We're gonna get so and so." And then they were like, "Okay, so you have this many $1 million," and they were like, "So we're gonna make one movie, but we're gonna cram it all in there." Because that's kind of how it feels. Like I'm like you have this great setup of all the like the cast is amazing, but then you just literally everyone's got like 6 minutes of screen time except for Brad Pitt, and you're just so I mean equal division. I don't know. It's when you really start to think about it, like I enjoy the movie for the movie's sake. I think it's fun, it's silly, it's enough blood and guts to make you happy. But I'm like, if we really, this could have been so, it could have been a TV miniseries, but could it have been a TV miniseries on this level before Game of Thrones?
Right.
Probably not.
Yeah, definitely not. If anything, it would be like the Sci-Fi Channel Dune movies.
Oh, don't poo poo
Oh,
those.
They're
I
not.
kind
They're
of have
not.
a soft
They're
spot
not
for them, but
terrible.
they're
yeah,
They're quite good
so
I
in quite a
actually
few.
do too.
Yeah.
so
No,
special
no,
to
no,
my
no. I'm not
my
poo-pooing them.
childhood.
I'm just giving a relative quality level. Like they're
I
it had
know.
James McAvoy.
I know. I like literally the Sci-Fi Channel is instrumental to my current sanity level sometimes. I'm like, how did I get here? Ah, yes, the Sci-Fi Channel.
Ah, Lex. So, pulling the pin on the gods conversation. So, I it's particularly pronounced in the director's cut, so I was like really really focusing on it. But it is this interesting through line of like how much people care about the gods. So, obviously this movie is taking the tact of, well, we're not going to really like have gods be active participants in the movie the way that like the Iliad does. Like that is one of the biggest changes from like before you get into all the actual like narrative changes. Like the first thing is just like, oh yeah, the gods are not active participants here. There are spots that are I think there are spots that are interesting where they like try to be like, this is why like it would be mythologized to have the gods in these ways. And then there are some spots where it's like kind of blurring the lines of like how divine some things are. Like I think that Thetis, Achilles' mother, is like very much blurring the lines. Like when you see her, like
Hmm.
she's kind of depicted as being like almost divine. And there's certainly ways that they like sort of hint that Achilles has this like divinity to him, where he's like, I've seen the gods, like, and it's supposed to be that he's this like sort of like brutal philosopher who is able to like, you know, grasp the beauty of the world and like see like all that. But it could also be that he is literally like a demigod. And most of the areas where it's like, oh well, Aphrodite did this, or it was just like, well, someone did it because they were in love, like then you see how they sort of play with that. Or there's things like when it's like Apollo rained fire on them and they have like the big fireballs that they like roll down, which I think is actually a really cool scene. So like there's that as aspect of like the deity stuff in this movie, and then there is the actual aspect of like how much people care about the deities in this all, and that this seems to go for everyone. Like even Achilles is like Apollo is like the the protector of, or the patron of our enemies, like take what you want, and he like destroys the statue for it. Like he seems to be defiant of the gods, but he doesn't seem to be acting as though the gods do not exist in it all. And like you know we've got the whole thing about the Trojans being so leaning into like their belief in the gods being the reason why they even like are susceptible to it. It's interesting, is I guess what I'm saying. Like I don't know what the movie is ultimately saying about it, but they're trying to say something.
Yeah, I agree. There's some context. I think that in the theatrical cut, the conversation that Achilles has with Briseis, who Briseis is both a main and a minor character. She's important,
Yeah.
but not at this. Like, if you cut her out, it wouldn't matter.
Mhm.
I think it's like one of those weird things where in both the myth and in the actual in the movie.
Yeah, and it's Rose Byrne who in like one of her first movies.
Yeah, dude, she's looking mighty fine in this movie too. I was like, hey girl, like look at you, those curls. Man, she's like straight out of an archetypical portrait of a Greek woman. Like that was a killer. That was a killer the way they did that.
Mhm.
She's a priestess of Apollo. She has like an existential crisis with him about the gods. And I mean that scene could have been 5 more minutes longer with actual dialogue and it would have made a lot of things make more sense. Like if you're just even going from the subcontext of like him saying, the mortals, here's the little secret, the gods are just jealous of mortals and being, like you said, just defiant of the gods. I think they're saying that if we're going to talk in, what do things represent in the real world at this time? Like, what are the gods? What are the gods? The puppeteers, are they the real puppeteers of the universe, or are they just jealous of the normal people that are living their lives in the universe? And what are these centrist liberals maybe potentially saying with that conversation as like who's pulling the strings here? Is Agamemnon the big bad, or is who's Agamemnon's godly patron? Then who's against Agamemnon? And like the really like the powers that be behind the reason of the Trojan War is really like going back to Thetis's wedding and talking about the apple of discord. And then if you really got into it, like Zeus had a proclamation that the gods were not supposed to be directly involved in the war, in the Trojan War, in this entire thing, because he was like, it's too personal. Everyone's just mad at Paris because Paris picked Aphrodite, and now you're mad at so and so because they did this, and then there's the desecration of the temple. Like I think there was a point where he said, he's like, what's he going to do about it? Smite me or but for whatever? And you see this, I guess, reality of where the god, like, is there magic in this movie?
Right.
Is there divine intervention in this movie? No, but I mean, this comes back to like the whole theory of, is this a reality? Like I listened to the conversation about King Arthur, and I think that what you said about Merlin and King Arthur, where he's like portrayed as the dark wizard, or he's magical, but it's really just woodcraft and like, ooh, sorcery, but it's not real sorcery. It's just someone that knows the woods and someone that's really good at what they do in guerrilla warfare. Where in Troy, Achilles is just a really excellent warrior. Troy is not doomed to fall or doomed to fated to fall. It just is going to fall because there's 50,000 people on the
Yep.
beach. It's
Yeah.
it's like what they're trying to say is, yes, there may be divine intervention and you can believe whatever you want to believe, but at the same time, you do make your own destiny. Like you as a normal person are to be envied by any gods that might exist.
Yeah.
I think they're trying to to portray it as like people would have thought, like the things that people were so amazing or so good, they were considered demigods or gods because there was no explanation for how they could be that
Yeah.
good at war or whatever.
I think also like at some point, because I think the movie kind of fights itself on that stuff. I mean, Agamemnon at one point, he does say, he has a speech, Brian talks at the speech where he like really focuses on him. Like, it's like me, it's me. And that's like something that like Greeks probably wouldn't have done, only because bad luck you would bring upon yourself by having so much hubris in front of the gods and giving yourself so much, so much credit but feeding into this idea that he's like this narcissistic megalomaniac based on control and stuff like that. But also this hint of like, it's not my patron behind me. It's not the gods. It's me. The movie kind of also does this thing where it kind of, and maybe I'm giving it too much credit at this point because we have discussed the writing. It kind of also does this thing where it kind of always has the humans kind of step forward and be like, no, these are my actions, right? Like Achilles, like, I've seen the gods, but like in a philosophical way. And his mother is pictured as an older woman that could feasibly be his mom and not just a young, eternally young, nymph from the sea. Like it's all these things where like it feels like this movie is trying to be the real version of a story without committing to saying that they're the true story like the Arthur movie had. Right? They're just kind of walking that fine line.
Yeah, it's not quite as hubristic, ironically. Which, yeah, I mean, because I think ultimately, like, there's acknowledgement of the fact that this movie is not really that concerned about history. Like, it is just
No.
trying to do like a pseudo historical setting for everything. Because like, there's so many questions I have about Troy. Like that, like again, the layout of Troy doesn't make any sense in this movie. And I have a note that I wanted to bring up, which is, does Troy have vassal states? Like, like it,
Yes, they had a ton of vassal states.
right. And that's what I'm getting at. Like, it seems like the whole perspective of the city is this very simplified thing here, and it's so bothersome to me. I'm just like going through my notes of like, wait, so not only was this war super short, it's against just one city. Like in this movie,
Yeah.
like at no point does it do anything to sort of like call in the troops. Like we don't
Hey,
have like armies joining them or
hey,
anything like that.
listen, it was a real awesome city with an incredible wall. Just just an amazing wall. And they needed to get Helen back. All you
Right.
need to know.
Super
And
good wall.
Achilles got really mad. And that's the movie.
Yeah.
And Brad Pitt's butt. That's the movie. That is the movie.
Here for the butts.
That is the Trojan. That's the Trojan horse of the movie.
Honestly, we needed some Eric Bana butt in this movie as well.
Oh man, what a tragic letdown. Could have used that love scene
Yeah.
just for the butt.
Or just a few more shirtless scenes also would be nice. Like, he's back, he's home, he's
He loved his wife. Why he was away for a while. You think they'd want to like make sure to greet each other, saying,
Yeah, I'm missed opportunity.
yeah.
Come on, Bana. Yeah. I think it's interesting, interesting choice. Bana was, I think, one of my favorite, like, just characters in this movie. One, he had at least two sentences strung together at least three times. Other than Odysseus, I think he probably had the most like lengthy lines.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, like, he's certainly the hero of this movie, like outside of, though not the protagonist, I guess we would say. Such an enviable character. He's the best man. Like, everyone loves him, and it's because he's so great and he handles all the situations well. Which, side note, when I was watching the director's cut, I was amazed at, they have like he accuses Paris of like sleeping with Helen in the director's cut, like before they leave Troy, and the tonal whiplash of those scenes was just jarring, because he goes from being like super nice big brother to being like kind of mad at him, and then being super nice big brother again. And I was like, oh, there's a lot going on there. That's definitely some reshoots involved, or something is like causing that to not quite work. But he's everyone's big brother is the point. Like in the movie, he, like, because so much of the drama is because of Paris's kidnapping of Helen, and like the way Hector handles it all. He's the level-headed big brother who, he doesn't let the superstitious stuff like get in the way for him, and he's the second best fighter after Achilles. So, like, we get the fight with Ajax to like, remind us of that. Like, everyone like rallies around him, and both Hector and Achilles get really nice speeches to their men. that is one of those like spots. It's like a very nice way of like juxtaposing the two of them. And so
Mhm.
they both give rather good speeches, but like the Hector one is very much about his duty and about his people. It's a very altruistic version of that speech, whereas like Achilles is about seizing glory and so forth. And it, is much, like it is just selfish in its own way. And so they both give great speeches, but Hector gives the one that's like the good guy speech. Like this, like, and so we come out of it with like Hector being like, yeah, he was really fucking awesome.
Yeah. I mean, he's clearly the family man, so
Yeah.
yeah.
I forget, did I share with you guys the music video I made to using footage from Troy set to Lie Collapse by Eminem?
You did not.
No.
No.
Oh my Lanta.
I made this
What?
back in college, and it is it is using the two, like it's using scenes that I like set up as like flashback scenes leading up to their actual fight to like
I'm
sort
gonna
of.
need you to put that like in the notes of the episode for people
Drop that
so
link.
they
Yeah,
can
yeah,
go and see it too. Now that you've brought it up, I think that's what's fair.
Yeah, you could have kept that to yourself, but you didn't, so now you have to
Uh-huh.
share with
yeah.
Yeah,
everyone.
No, that's
you
fine.
could have even told us like after the call, but now you've told us on this conversation, and I do think that the Another Pass community deserves to definitely see it.
To
It's
see one of
not
my old
posted to the
AMVs.
Discord. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. It should at least go into the Discord, at least, at the very least.
Okay. Just for y'all
Take a
right
note
now.
for yourself. Oh,
For posterity. Yes, I'm totally gonna watch this on my TV. I do love the airdrop feature. Blown up.
Amazing.
My roommate was laughing. He goes, "You've watched a lot of TV lately." I was like, "Oh, I'm rewatching Troy again this morning and was just like watching the end." And he goes, "Oh man, I wish you would have told me you were watching this. I like totally like love this movie." Really? He goes, it's just good. Like, it's like shit blowing up, stuff, people die. Like, it's a good time movie. I'm like, bro, this is amazing.
Yeah, it's funny how like
I wasn't expecting that. Like when I actually had my headphones on and was listening to it because it was early in the morning, and he came down. And he goes, "Oh, I mean, you should have just told me. I would have just come down and watched it with you."
that's awesome. Yeah, yeah, because like again, this movie is a fun movie. Like the fact that I have all these questions about like how like the logistics of how like Troy operates as a city is only because like well the movie is like kind of a simple like popcorn movie, but like it is fun that they did a simple popcorn movie adaptation of the Trojan War. It's just like Vanessa, as you point out, they're like speed running everything and jamming it all into this one movie and showing too many sides. Like they're wasting time by making us like Hector so much when again he's not the main character of this movie.
Yeah, I feel like they did a lot of setup for like very specific things for Achilles' storyline, which I get, but I think maybe a little too much setup.
So yeah, I feel like we're in a kind of good spot talking about this movie because like we could go into like nitpicks about like way more, and I know I've picked plenty of nits on this episode. Like there's a lot to like criticize about this movie because it is kind of just like a little dumb, but it's fun and it's an enjoyable movie. But is there anything else that you all want to like make sure that we mention before we like take a break and come back for pitches? Because I think the rest of my stuff I can kind of get into my pitch about the movie because it's the things I would actually like fix as opposed to just the like it like isn't it silly that they don't even like address these kind of things kind of critiques. So I feel like I'm good, but Sam, Vanessa, how are you?
Oh, I'm good.
Epic. All right. Let's
So epic.
So epic. So let's take a break, and during that time we are going to shout out one of the wonderful shows on our podcast network, and when we come back we are going to speculate on how this movie could have been better at the time of production.
Hey,
Oh, hey, Jeff.
what's going on, guys?
Oh, talking about Superman.
Oh, cool. I could talk about Superman.
I could talk some more about Superman.
We know.
I'll bet a few people would want to get in on this.
I'm down.
You know it.
That sounds like fun. I'll do it.
Cool, let's do it. We can call the show Men of Steel.
And you can find it at certainpov.com.
Or wherever you get your podcasts.
Yay.
And we're back. All right, Vanessa. So here is the deal. We have guidelines and then we have one rule on this show. So the guidelines are that we are trying to play within the realm of reality of discussing the movie. So like Brad Pitt is a big part about why this movie got made. We can't recast Brad Pitt. Like that just isn't in the cards because that's how that worked. But we can discuss we can speculate on things, but the goal is to try to keep it somewhere in the realm of like this was possible. And obviously, it's not the movie that actually came out, so it's still like hypothetical. Those are the guidelines. The rule is that I am not allowed to go before Sam. So the way this can go, and you are our guest, so you can pick how this order is going to go. And it always turns into something a bit more collaborative because we're going to like throw ideas at each other based on what each one of us sort of like presents. Is that you can go first or Sam can go first. I just can't go before Sam. So I can be second if Sam goes first, and then you could go last. But I just can't be the first one in the sequence here. So how do you want to play this? Who do you want to have take the first spear chuck?
I have a sneaking suspicion that Sam and I have very similar feelings on how this movie could be very easily fixed or at least improved greatly, because I think we both already said kind of our feelings on like what's the story actually about and could we just make one simple change. But I think Sam should go first.
Okay. So I think you're absolutely right. My smallest change, okay, if I cannot simply change the title and make this movie just about Achilles, that this movie absolutely is and absolutely wants to be. Okay. I absolutely positively need the discussions of the passage of time to be in this film. And very simply what I said before, Sean Bean is a great actor who would be a wonderful choice to help us along with that, especially because actually would help us kind of flesh out Odysseus, who is vastly underserved by this script. You bring in this incredible actor who's actually really well cast as Odysseus. I would have actually really loved to see an Odysseus film with him in it, trying to like get back home. Would have fucking loved that.
100%.
I would have been totally in. Although in that one, I definitely do want the gods to be real, and I want all of it. I want the mayhem and the myth and all of the trouble. But,
you could not write the Odyssey without the gods.
For sure.
I would be fascinated to see the attempt, but I agree it would be difficult. It
would be so hard. It would be.
I mean, there is a Brother, Where Art Thou? Like, you can theoretically like work around it, but
right. But even that kind of had it just kind of had substitutes for the gods. The gods were there, and Brother Out Thou. But in any case, I think that if we have some more scenes with him, I mean, like the beginning of the movie, we have Agamemnon said there's only one man he listens to, and then we barely ever see them interacting, which is crazy. I think more Sean Bean would fix this movie. That's my pitch. My pitch is we should actually make this really about Achilles' struggle, okay? And we put more Sean Bean scenes in here with him, okay? And we like literally have him talk about the passage of time, have him be the person that's come like, come on, guys, like, are you sure we still need to be here? Like, just have him constantly just be this voice of like reason, be this voice of like, okay, understand we have to kick some butt, but also some of us have wives at home. Like some of us have hot wives at home that want to go home to their hot wives at home. I think that generally, if you use him to kind of help the audience along through this story, because I think the other thing is that so much of this is happening that is just battle, and like if you're not familiar with what's happening, it's kind of just a bunch of people slashing at each other and posturing. Kind of feels like they keep inviting people out for dance battles,
yeah,
and not like a full war, like
Yeah, I have a note that we didn't bring up in it, but this movie really feels like a video game with like hero units in your it feels like Warcraft 3 to me specifically, where it's just like, oh yeah, you've got your footmen, but then also your paladin unit that you can like move around. And like
Yeah,
it really feels like here's the troops, and then here's the hero that goes with them. Like there's Ajax's boat, where Ajax is the hero unit that travels on it,
yeah,
Achilles, and so forth. Like the characters really have that kind of vibe, and it is frustrating in this movie, but I'm not entirely sure how to fix it because
yeah.
because they are the heroes of it all. But it does get into stuff that we'll talk about in my pitch. Anyway, go.
Okay. So, and I think that the big issue is that, I think like a lot of times, and this is just true also of ancient wars, especially where there is a wall, there is a lot of posturing that happens, right? And the problem is that because they don't actually show us, there's just a lot of dead bodies, but they don't show us a war. And the key points are the posturing moments. What it feels like is two groups of people showing up to have the ultimate like, no you bro, no you, game of chicken. And I think what we need here is we need some Odysseus to kind of talk us through, even if he's talking us through some of the battles. Even if he comes in, like, let's say we have him come back and he's like, he comes in and he says something to Achilles about like wishing he had come with him on a raid to a nearby island, right? And dropping off like a fat pig. Like, yes, they won't be coming anytime soon. We have a little dimension into like the structure of the war and that kind of thing. Would have loved a couple of like a side quest, one side quest to a nearby village or something. Would have been nice. Theseus is the perfect character. Sean Bean is the perfect actor to help us narrate some of these things without extending the runtime. And I do think we cut a lot of the first half where we don't give a lot of juxtaposition. We just kind of give a narration of like, this is Paris. This is Helen. They ran away together. They're now in Troy. This is Hector. He's fucking awesome. This is his wife. This is the king. And then it's all about the Greeks. And just like leave it at that because there's just this movie tries to do too much without doing anything at all. And at the end of it, honestly, unless you are Case and Vanessa and you're a classics major, you are bored like Greek mythology, but this movie bores the fuck out of me. I'm sorry. I was so bored. I'm like, you still have 30 minutes left when the horse shows up. Like, it is so much time. And that's 2 hours into the movie of the theatrical cut. That is too long for a normal person who is not into Greek and Roman battles, what people fear each other with no context whatsoever.
Oh, actually, wait. Sorry, this is a question I had
Yes.
that I forgot to get to in the first half, which is, where do you think the break into three is in this movie? Oh, is it when where is it
Oh, where's the third
relatively?
act?
Yeah, like into the third act,
Th- I
because like
I think the problem is you have like a fourth act going on.
right, that's what I'm kind of getting at, because it kind of feel like because the Trojan horse thing feels like this tacked on part, and it is to the Iliad component of it. Like the actual conflict between Hector and Achilles is the main
Right.
thrust of this movie. It that is like kind of a weird spot there, where it almost feels like the break into three is the death of Patroclus.
Hector.
So, like, here's the thing. Like, it would have been incredibly interesting. Then you named it Troy. So, like, everyone would be pissed, right? It would have been incredibly interesting since we're doing an abridged version of war completely. If you just have him kill Hector and then, like, in the next scene, you have Paris anticlimactically, which would be hilarious for me, just shooting Achilles in the heel, and then he dies, and that's the end of the movie. That would be so funny to me on some level. And that would have been a complete movie because you would have had the end of everything. But because we named the movie Troy, we have to have the freaking horse. Because the normal person, the average person, person who doesn't know thing doesn't know the in-depth myths or anything. When they think of Troy, they think of that horse. A lot of people don't even remember that the Greeks are the ones that built it. They just think of the Trojan horse, okay? So we have to have a fourth act with the horse, no matter what we do. It's the horse naming it Troy has to go. Now, if this is the anger of Achilles, this is a different movie. And you can end it with the end of Achilles, and you can end it with fire in Odysseus' eyes and ready to build the horse. And you've got a different film all together. And you've got a sequel ready that starts with a horse, leads into the Odyssey that Sam would love to watch. That's not this movie. So there's a fucking horse for this movie, which makes this movie too long, no matter what you do. So the only thing you can do is cut down on the Trojans in the first half. Maybe have your third or fourth break come in sooner so that you can have your fucking horse. I'm sorry, this is why this movie makes me dizzy. Long, it's too long. But yes, I think we spend less time with the Greeks, or less time with the Trojans. We focus on the Greeks. We bring in more Odysseus to be our faithful narrator and intro into this world, trying to calm everyone down and trying to convince them they should go home, letting us know about the passage of time. And then we still end with the horse. And yeah, Achilles can jump out of it and get killed by Paris in the city. That's fine. It's fine. Yes, fine. But that's how I would fix it. Richard, or you can make Case go first.
No. I love that you go with basically like because like the usual rule is not rule, like the usual like talking point is like try to get like the voiceovers out of it, because like movies don't really need voiceovers is often like, you know, just common wisdom. But I actually kind of agree with you having like Sean Bean like lean into the voiceovers, because he's got it at the beginning and the end of the movie, and that's it. Like have just have a few narrations like somewhere in the middle of the movie, and like it could be like days turned into years, you know, and like the fighting continued or something like that. Like all of a sudden,
have him give us the story. He's got a wonderful voice. He's underutilized in this movie, and have him basically tell us, you know, narrate the beginning. Let him narrate it further. Let him tell us the story. Don't even bother with the kissing. Have them talk. Okay, I don't want to hear Orlando Bloom's voice. Okay, for the first half of the film, I think
I'm so dead.
Don't hate Orlando Bloom. I want this to be said. I'm sorry, Orlando Bloom, if you're listening. It's not about you. We need to cut this movie down. It is too long. So have him, like, you know, Sean Bean talk about Menelaus and Helen and Paris. You can still have all the actors do all the scenes, just no words, just looking at each other, intense stares, making out, I don't care. Scene of them running away. Put some gold in her pocket, because we all know money was involved. She's not that innocent. Steal the money. Like you know, along with his bride took part of the coffers, and Menelaus knew that he and Agamemnon needed to get it. So we sacrificed his daughter, which pissed off Achilles, and off we go. You go and you get in with it with Achilles, who gets off, doesn't want to go, and Odysseus convinces him. That's the beginning of the movie, and that's it. And then we've got just following Brad Pitt and his butt, lots more men butts, and that's how we fix this movie and make it 2 hours and 15 minutes, rather 2 hours and 45 minutes for the theatrical cut.
Full stop. Period. Gets the axe out.
You know, it's so funny because
on the block,
because the director's cut, which, you know, like we didn't hammer too much. The director's cut is way too fucking long. And
no, listen, I looked it up because I thought, oh, Kate is doing A+ homework here. Let me see if I can be an A student. To being like B+ at best for this podcast. I'll admit it, okay? And I was like, I looked at the runtime and I was like, oh, yeah, no, Sam will be watching one version of this, and it's the 2 hours and 40-minute version of this. That's the one she'll be watching on Netflix for free. Thank you so much.
No, that is fair. Fair.
3 hours and change. The director's cut.
Yeah,
It is ridiculous length.
it is too long, and a lot of it is unnecessary. But
It needs an intermission.
well, the DVD was 2 discs.
Yes,
Yeah.
I remember.
Yeah.
3 hours and 16 minutes. I just looked it up.
He said I looked it up.
It's 3 hours and 16 minutes.
Yeah, and you feel it. You feel it in this one. There's also some weird choices with it, like the score is changed, and most of it doesn't really bother me, except for the fight between Hector and Achilles. They for some
You mean the Planet of the Apes song?
Yes,
What the
yes.
hell?
I thought I was going crazy when I heard that. I was like, is that the Planet of the Apes song from the Tim Burton Planet of the Apes? And I was like, it's gotta be something just like I was like, it's gotta be like a bigger piece, like a classic piece that was just used in Tim Burton's Planet of the Apes. And then I looked it up and like, no, it actually just is the music from fucking Tim Burton's Planet of the Apes. Like it's just Danny Elfman music just randomly inserted.
Don't forget Josh Groban wrote the credit run song too.
Right, yeah.
There were some real contextual choices on the times.
Yeah, exactly. Like how 2004 a movie is it?
I'm just sad that there wasn't an opening credit scene with all the actors' names and the cinematographer and the costume director and everybody, because I feel like that
would have been amazing.
That was really,
while Sean Bean talks over telling you the story. Yes. It would have been amazing.
So I'm gonna just expound on Sam's feelings because they are very similar to mine, in that this movie should have been called The Wrath of Achilles, and it should really have started when Odysseus went to Achilles to beg him to come fight in this war, and he told him, I'm sorry, Menelaus can't keep his wife in his house? That sounds like a him problem, not an us problem. And then we could have explained a little bit about why Tyndaius, what did they call it? The Tyndaian Pact, where all the suitors of Helen had to sign a pact to say they would go to war if anything, like whatever, if something happened, which is very, which is Odysseus literally.
You are solving a problem, the same problem that I am going to try to solve. I'm just like, I have it in a different spot. I'm excited about it.
So here's the thing. If we set up, like throw the softball in the air, Odysseus, yes, Sean Bean, Odysseus, narrator, voiceover or whatever he is. I think that instead of having him as a voiceover, he's the storyteller and he's the machinist. Like he's the person that sets it all up. So instead of having him as an actual just voiceover, he's sitting there at the campfire every night on the beach saying like, oh man, we just had this meeting with the Agamemnon. We've been here 7 years, blah, blah, blah. Like, or on the boat talking to the men, just over a little skin of wine or something, but make it like a real, like actual interaction without being a voiceover, because we all hate voiceovers. We think they're lame. Or big blocks of text at the beginning, which we also think are sometimes very lame.
And this movie has both.
I know, 2 for 1. But yeah, I think changing the scope, cutting down our time in Troy. Maybe I would love to have Peter O'Toole as Priam because he's absolutely amazing. And maybe if he had only had 15 minutes in the film total, he would have been less money and also been happier with his role and the cut. But
he looks so sad to be there in every shot.
Pissed. He is also on record for being like, this director is a clown. I was like, damn. Everybody was pissed about this movie that was in it. But yes, so I think if we rename, that probably is going to change the cast, because some people probably got cast based on the amount of time they would be spending on screen.
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
So I am certain that there would be maybe some changes to the cast based on that. But yes, I need Eric Bana's butt, Achilles, to have more than like random ass lines where he's just like looking away. If he's going to be the focus and the hero in the movie, make him the focus and the hero. Like build everything up around him, but stop trying to create a tool. It's like a dual POV movie that didn't need to be. And yes, it ends with the fucking horse. Paris gets killed. Helen goes back to get her ass beat by Menelaus because that's exactly what was going to happen. Or she's not real and she's just a figment of everyone's imagination, like in the other myths. But regardless, Menelaus doesn't die in the first fucking scene, and I hold that I need the Oreste. So we also can't kill Agamemnon. That's disrespectful to his wife, who was definitely deserved to stab him.
Agreed.
Yeah. I like that the central problem that I think this movie has is why the fuck are they doing this? Like, and that
Yeah,
you are
seriously.
addressing it pretty well here, because I actually was thinking about the same thing, because I had this note, the King of Kings scene where like they're all like kissing the ring of Agamemnon. I have a note about it, like it's so like indicative of just like how like hilarious and like silly like monarchical structures are. Just like the very concept of like royalty is like kind of absurd when you really get into it. And this movie is sort of playing around with it because like all the characters that we care about are royalty. Even like it's like, oh well, this priestess of Apollo happens to be a princess. Like everyone has to be like in some way like a royal family member, or they don't really even get a name. And that's just a part of this all. Anyway, so I think that this movie actually needs an additional scene that is like that after the taking of Thessaly, where we get to establish why Achilles is subservient to Agamemnon and how he sees him, and set that up as a way of getting this sort of like, okay, this is the like vassal state structure that like Mycenae has, or Mycenae, like for the rest of the Greek states, and how all these characters like are like playing into it. Like there's the line where Sean Bean as Odysseus says, Ithaca cannot, stand to like, have Agamemnon as an enemy or something to that effect. And it's like, oh right, yeah, because he's a king of it. And like Odysseus is still a war, or not Odysseus, Achilles is still a warlord, even if he is not necessarily like another like royal like figure in this all. He's still like a noble. And so it's sort of set up like, okay, these are the pacts that we've played into. Here's all the relationships that we have going, because fundamentally the state of the world of the Greek world, or the Bronze Age world that they're in at this point, resembles like immediately prior to World War I Europe, like where everyone is like related to each other through like marriage pacts and so forth. And like that there's this like intricate like interconnected web of relationships that are positioning them in such a manner where like such a simple affront as like, the abduction of someone's wife causes everyone to fall into this huge war. So I think we need to spend a little bit of time explaining that, because that is the reason for everyone to be there, for everyone to show up at the like at Troy, at the shores of Troy. Then and I what I because I'm taking this from the perspective of like, well, how do we do a movie that's like fairly similar to what they actually made, and that's kind of going. I'm trying to split the difference between the director's cut and the theatrical cut for the most part, but with like a couple of extra scenes in there. And I think that having some conveyance of the passage of time, not just saying it could survive for 10 years, but like I'm saying, like have a bit of a city structure outside of the walls of Troy and sort of indicate the shape of Troy. Like you could do this with a few like CG inserts. This wouldn't really require that much time. It would cost money, so that there is a factor there. But I feel like this movie is pretty big budget, so they were using a lot of CG to get around like having to like spend money on building sets. So I feel like this is not a huge ask to be like, could you just do a wide shot of the city so that we can kind of see what it's supposed to look like, and then do one later in the movie that shows like the Greeks have like positioned themselves around it. And like again, I don't think that would add too much time to this movie, but I think that the Greeks need to establish themselves as being the villains even more so. I think that we need to have all the scenes of Menelaus being a shitty husband with Helen. I think that we need to have Agamemnon be just fucking terrible all the time, and that's why I think we need to have this like King of Kings scene earlier in the movie before we get to the one on the beach, and have the beach one be, it's how we get the argument between him and Agamemnon that leads to the feuding state, the fury of Achilles. And I think that is fine as it is. I think insert some of the gore. I think that stuff like Ajax's lines when he like shows up on the beach in the director's cut is like stupid and should absolutely not be there. He goes like, "I am Ajax, like just like destroyer of people, like look upon me in despair." He actually says "look upon me in despair," which I'm like, why did you put that line in there?
Distinct, again, we have distinct choices. Distinct choices.
But again, I think that there's a lot of good stuff going on in both cuts of the movie, because again, I enjoy this movie and I think that the director's cut adds some things that are good. It's just it adds too much stuff and some of it is like totally whiplashed. So, keep the sort of simple like, cut from Sparta to the ship with the Trojans taking Helen away. Like keep that, quick. But set up Menelaus as being shitty. Spend more time with that. And then, lean into Hector being awesome. And like don't spend too much time having you know, Paris being a whiny bitch. We need to have as few scenes of that as possible in this movie. So just like keep him, like we were saying, like we barely want to hear him in the first 30 minutes of this movie.
Who are we recasting Paris? Who are we recasting him? Sam, I feel like you have somebody.
I don't have any of that time because here's the thing. Time has no meaning to me anymore. And I would literally have to look up who was around. It needs to be someone like Orlando Bloom is a good looking person and he has his own charm, but it needs to be someone rakish. It needs to be someone that can get away with things. Like, wouldn't pass Hugh Grant, but he's got to have like Hugh Grant level of being able to be a dick but get away with it. Like you still think you like him, even though he's not the best person in the world. If anyone who was age appropriate at that moment to have that power, there's got to be. It's got to be. I can't even think of anyone current. I also don't know names of people anymore. I'm too old. God. But no, but I do think that I needed someone with a little more of a sly smile, but still, that be? Who would that be? I don't know. I don't know, guys. It's an impossible ask.
Who was McDreamy or McSteamy? I think that would have been.
Oh, maybe.
Or like Josh Duhamel? Maybe Josh Duhamel?
Yes, maybe. Or the one that everyone confuses him for that did this in sci-fi movies. The guy's not interesting. But there's best friend. I can't think of his name right now.
I know who you're talking about, but I can't think of the name either, which is just gonna drive us mad. Yeah. Anyway, yeah, because like, so I just don't see them not doing the Trojan horse part. So like I think that they would go through the whole of of doing the Trojan War. But I think that they should have establishing shots to indicate the passage of time, and I agree with the sort of idea of having like Sean Bean and like having contextual scenes to sort of establish like it has been a number of years. Like I said, like it'd be really great to have like Sean Bean say like days have turned into years, like lines like that to sort of like be like, okay, now it's been 3 years, now it's been x number of years, and like I think that another thing this movie lacks is a change of scenery. Sam, I think you were the one who mentioned the idea of like going on raids to local communities.
Yeah.
I think that would be the type of thing that would be really good to like have different angles of things. Like again, I think if you have like an outer city that they like fight their way through, that gives you like one additional type of set to have as a piece for them. But I think having a couple of different environments, like a few battles at sea, would be nice, or like them landing on like an island or something, like that. To something, establish the provisions issue, because like we don't in this movie. Like they just arrive and like they have enough supplies for the like 2 weeks and like some few days. Like it never comes up that they need to have like supplies sent to them, or that they would like run out of anything. Deal with that for a minute there. Like have like ships coming in and out, and use that as like your means of sort of being like, it has of saying like time has passed on this whole thing, because it has to be a war. It can't just be a battle for Troy. So that's mine. Like mine is very much like mostly from an editor perspective. Like I said, the like have some more of the like the violent shots in the battlefields. But I think that the director's cut is too long, and is too long in the fights too. So like I don't want to like extend those, and certainly most of the bonus scenes that are in the director's cut aren't necessary.
Right.
Just a few with like the in like establishing mental houses being like kind of shitty, and a few more with like the dissension in the ranks for them. I think it's helpful having like the planning meeting to discuss how they're going to attack Troy. I think that's useful. So more bits like that. But yeah, that's mine. Yeah.
Timothy Oliphant, that's his name.
Oh, it's who you're thinking of.
Yeah. Okay. They have like a similar look, but yeah. Yeah, right.
Yes,
Like
I'm
he
in for
has
that.
the rakish.
Also want to see his butt.
Yeah. But he's got like he was a lot younger then, so he's perfect for the role. And he was also like young, rakish. He has the attitude where he could like seem like he wasn't exactly the most responsible guy, but like I think he would have nailed it. But yeah, also Case, to your point, I think that some of the challenges, with the battle scenes is not only that they're long, but they all look the same, right?
Right.
So if we put in some of the texture by giving it like either a sea battle or going into a different city or a different town, then you're feeling like a passage of time. You're seeing new things, right? You're not kind of having the same choreography done over and over and over. And I think that was really rough on the battle scenes, because I actually in general like battle scenes. I like sword fights. Used to do some sword fighting, and I used to do martial arts. So I technically really enjoy watching really beautifully choreographed fight scenes. But I found these, although technically good, kind of boring. And it's because you're looking at the same thing over and over and over again. And there's only so many times you can watch faceless guy wearing immaculate helmet, because the helmets were great, fall over from being killed. Like there's just only so much of that you can do without changing the scenery, the space. And it feels like you only have one battlefield when this is an all out war and not just a single battle. And so, like, would have been nice. There are mountains, there are hills, there are cities, there's the water. It would have been nice to have a little bit of contrast in that.
Right. Yeah. Like this is why I think that the Trojans, like, or rather the Greeks getting around the Trojans, like on like cutting off, for example, their ability to exit from the rear would be an interesting here's a race of the like they're trying to get like people out, they're trying to get messengers out to get to their vassals, they're do something, and like the Greeks are like racing around it, and like the Greeks don't necessarily have the same number of horses because they just came over on boat, and so they have a few. We see that they have some, but it's not enough, and so like there could be dramatic sequences that are just like invented for this war, but would actually be like really interesting things to see that they just don't fucking do in this movie.
Yeah.
It's again, this movie has like such a limited perspective on like what war even is, that it's just remarkable to like behold and take in the simplicity. And so just like any kind of like layering would be just so appreciated.
Yeah. And you have Odysseus there. He's so smart. You telling me that he couldn't sneak a couple people on a rowboat to try for a little attack somewhere?
Would be appreciated,
but underused.
But then they would have to figure out clever things for Odysseus to do, and they don't seem to be good at figuring out clever things for him. You didn't see in the director's cut when they go to find Odysseus, and he's like pretending to be a farmer who's just like, I fucking hate Odysseus. He drinks my wine, that asshole. And the guards that like came to like get him are like, you should respect your king, and then they just like walk off, and he's like, Agamemnon's people aren't very smart, are they? I'll serve. And it's just like, no, that's like he's supposed to be trying to not go.
Like, for one thing, a bell kick and does a old shucks with his arm and skips on off. That's what I imagine.
But it's also just like that's not a very clever disguise. Like he just relied on them just not recognizing him, and then like was like said a few lines like what was his plan there? Like what if they just knew what he looked like?
I mean, but how would they? It's not like they got a picture.
That's true. True.
Like, I mean, like the whole thing of them not realizing Patroclus wasn't Achilles, like how would they know? Like unless somebody said, oh my god, that's not Achilles.
Yeah.
Like Eric Bana looks at him and is like, oh my god, that's not Achilles. Is it just because he's so young in the movie? Maybe, but in reality, Achilles really set sail when he was like 17-ish, whatever. But regardless, I mean, I think that there's so many things, and when you get the chance to like nitpick it, it can be so much more and whatever. But like I think the funniest question is, why was this movie made the way that it was, and what were the reasons for this? Because I'm like, is there nepotism? Who the writer? What's it? I
David
forget.
Benioff.
Yeah, who does he know? Who did he watch kill somebody? Like, because he is, if he wrote this script, I mean, I don't know why the execution is, it's just so stilted. Like, it's like blah blah blah. Like, at first I thought, maybe I remember the first time watching this and I was wondering if maybe it was written kind of in homage to like the way epics are written, which is what makes it feel very stage play, like where it's like, I am doing this thing and this thing is being done by me and thusly it is so. The whole screenplay, except for very specific certain things, read that way. And I'm like, at first I just thought it was on purpose. And now I'm like, is this guy just shitty at his job?
So yeah, kind of. So
More context years later makes more sense.
here's the context on this one. I was like, yeah, no, he's a nepo baby, and I tried to remind myself like what kind of nepo baby, so I just looked him up real quickly. His dad is the former head of Goldman Sachs.
Yep, that's a nepo baby. Dum dum dum
Yeah,
dum.
so this,
Because you could have like, what would have worked better is if he had just cut and pasted some lines of someone's Iliad translation, because goddamn, these scenes are clunky. I mean, the best case scenario is new writer, but we're not getting that. So
right.
Yeah.
Which it does make me wonder, like where Benioff like got involved in it, because he's the sole credited writer, and I don't know much.
Oh no, they credited Homer too. They credited Homer.
Well,
He's
I'm
like,
sorry, there were
sure.
there was no Porter also wrote this. It was like, oh yeah, you know what would be amazing? You know what would be amazing? Let's have him come out of the horse and run to find his stick. Yeah.
Like, I want 5 minutes in a dark room with him, with Benioff, and be like, I need to know why he wrote this way.
yeah, well, that's what I'm getting at. I'm curious if this was on spec, or if someone was like, we want to develop a Trojan War movie, and like he got hired to, and I could see either direction kind of going that way, just because he would be well positioned to like have like to write a script and like actually get it seen by someone.
Maybe he wrote it in like high school and was like, hey, this is the perfect time for me, a aspiring Latin student, to put my little project up for grabs for a multi-million-dollar Hollywood movie.
Right.
Oops. Yeah. Yes, more Odysseus, more butts, more explanation,
Yeah.
less Trojans. We're good.
More passage of time.
Yes.
Yeah. Those would all be helpful here. A little more violence in the actual fight scenes. It is a little sanitized in the theatrical cut, but not too much. But yeah, definitely gayer. This movie should be gayer.
Yes.
If and they weren't gonna do this at
It
the
goes
time.
with the more butts.
Yeah.
That goes with the more butts.
But
Yeah.
like, man, like if we could have thruple going on with Patroclus, Achilles, and Briseis, like that would be great. Like,
then we could have just cut out this bullshit about him being his cousin.
Right.
I mean, come on, guys.
Oh
Like,
yeah, that's just stupid.
Unfortunate.
yeah.
I mean, not that your cousins were different
Right.
times, different strokes, whatever. But I mean, Agamemnon married Clytemnestra, who is Helen's wife. So we're already dealing with interfamilial marriage into other families. Like, you're just shrinking the gene pool here, kids.
Yep. Well,
Right.
again, like it's
Yeah.
the aristocracy of this era is almost like its own separate like gene, like it's like a family lineage. Like, again, I compared it to Europe pre-World War I, and like they're
definitely,
you know, everyone seems to be in some way related to each other, and like separate from the general populace, which is like kind of its own interesting element there, which you probably could get into some sort of thing about Mike and Agrees, but I am not sure enough about that one. Like when
ain't nobody got time for the Achaeans. But also, like, they bring up that this is the only other sticky point I have about the movie is that they wouldn't have this is pre-unified Greece. Like,
Right.
we're pre-Hellenic. Like, I think that using the term Greek is a cop out, and it should have been for the might of Mycenae or Mycenae, for because it was not for the country. Like, it was for the city state system that most of these vassals, for lack of a better term, owed military, like, just that's it. Like, that was like their only contribution to the quote unquote Mycenaean city state. They're not like, and probably some taxes, but at the same time, we're in the Bronze Age. Let's be
Yeah, like that's the other
realistic.
thing, which is it is also like it is Bronze Age, so it is not the polis system era of Greece.
No.
So it is actually more unified in that regard, differently unified. They don't see themselves as Greek so much as having like a central like power that's overseeing them, which is Agamemnon.
Yeah, because this is pre-country, like, so they're unified in a way, but not in the same. I mean, I guess what they Troy calls itself, like, they do reference Troy as being a country, so maybe they're oversimplifying the idea, but they wouldn't have been called Greeks. They would have been called Achaeans
Right.
or Achaeans or whatever. But nobody. But at the same time, it's not like this movie is grossly historically accurate in any way, shape, or form. So the costumes,
Yeah, the
yeah,
costumes, and yeah, there's pretty people in this.
shiny, yeah.
Well, I
Except for what's his name's teeth. They were pretty bad. He's an old dude.
oh Priam Peter O'Toole's.
Yeah. Peter O'Toole's bottom teeth are a situation. I'm just like,
Well, don't judge the esteemed actor by the mouth.
I judge him by the things that come out of it, and he was excellent. So
Yes. Peter O'Toole can do just about any performance liquored up and would do a fantastic job. And I'm betting you that's what was going on behind the scenes here.
Hondo fade.
100%. But yeah, Vanessa, thank you for coming on, and thank you for indulging me when I was like, hey, do you want to come on and talk about this movie? Because I want to talk about it with you.
Sam, I understand why he needed another classicist, because otherwise he was just gonna like spew this stuff at you, and you were gonna be like, how many wives?
No, I'm actually very used to Case just doing that anyway. That's like that's how our relationship started, really. He'd be like,
Yep.
actually, in it would be something comic book related, and I'd be like, yeah, okay, go on. And I would just sit there and listen. So that's pretty much I'm used to it
Yeah.
for sure.
That's amazing. I love this. I love this friendship.
Yeah, no, I surround myself with people who will just let me case out on them.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Oh, that's such a good term.
And honestly, if I have snacks, he can pretty much go on for hours because I'm satiated. Like I'm like, oh, donuts? Go on, friend. Tell me all about the Phoenix Saga.
That's hilarious.
Well, the thing you have to
Oh,
understand
man.
is what was being developed by Chris Claremont at the time, coming off of the original run of X-Men.
Well, someday we could discuss a potential pitch for the Odyssey to the Sci-Fi Channel or HBO.
Oh, that'd be
Just
amazing.
with the caveat that the certain someone cannot be the writer ever, ever.
Right.
Agreed.
Yeah, we there have been times where I've thought about having like a spin-off for the show where we'd like actually just like straight up pitch movies, but then that does get into like a hanky area if we actually ever do want to write them.
Oh yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
I understand. But that can be over beers, wines, or spirits.
That is true. Beers, wines, or spirits.
We do have access to plenty of those.
We do, and so that is our day jobs, because you are a phenomenal sales rep pushing beers, wines, and spirits. But you've got other stuff going on. So Vanessa, give your plugs. Who are you? Where can people find you? Like what's your deal?
Yeah, I'm in Washington, D.C. I'm a recovering Latin and German major, so classics in German. And I was in hospitality for a long time in restaurants, and I work primarily in wine. And I'm the co-founder and president of an organization in DC, a nonprofit called Vitahlihtay. We are a community of women in the wine industry, and you can follow us on Instagram at little at Women of Wine DC. I'm 99%. Now I'm like really nervous. I'm like, did I get that wrong? We never changed the Instagram handle, but then we got TLDR legal things. You can't call anything Women of Wine, even though I really wanted it to be Women of Winecraft because it's wow. But not everybody is nerdy, unfortunately, and I got shot down. But yeah, and I am active in the community in DC, especially in the hospitality spirit side. But yeah, I mean, if you want to learn about wine and meet some cool women in the wine industry, follow us and come to our events. But if not, then, see you when I see you.
Yeah, no, people should check that out. Been so awesome watching the just the growing port that you all have gotten, like ever since your first initial like tirade that like sort of like launched it.
Oh yeah, we got really mad. So the reason this is actually kind of funny. There is a very, very well-known food critic that does a little talk show on Wednesdays, and he didn't name, someone asked him for some recommendations for some women sommeliers or wine professionals in the city, and he's like, oh, there's a couple here, there's a couple there. I can't think of anyone's name out right off the bat, and people like got mad, like really upset, especially because he's been a food critic in DC for quite a few years. I mean, he definitely has met many of us, and at the time a couple of people reached out and they're like, can you put a list together? They're like, everybody. And I'm like, okay. So we started this big list. And then we got together and we're like, can we do something with this list? So we posted it online and got interviewed by the Post and just talked about like, the community is so strong in DC. And some people were like, well, could we like do an event? And so the event led to like people asking, could we do some scholarships or, some professional development workshops, and can you get people together? And now about almost 3 years later, we have our 501c3, we have a website, we've got an Instagram, we try to do events and promote other women in the organization. We do a lot of partnership with other orgs in DC, like Chefs for Equality and Human Rights Campaign. We usually partner with Napa Valley Vintners when they're in town. And I mean, it's just about amplifying voices, and we're about to release our first ever scholarship recipients in 2025, and I'm really excited about that.
That's so cool.
So I'm just like, I could cry. It's like really awesome. But yeah, it all started with everyone getting real pissed off about someone not being able to name one of over 300 women in the wine industry in DC, from sommeliers to sales reps to winemakers and owners of wineries and stuff that live here. And hospitality podcasts, like there's multiple women that do some really amazing like social media and nonprofit work as well. So like I was literally just at a wine festival with a bunch of them. It was a lot of fun.
That's so cool. It's so awesome to see how it's grown, and that is awesome to hear about the actual scholarships like for next year. That's fantastic. Yeah. So everyone, please check that all out. We will have the links in our descriptions as we try to do for all of our episodes.
Woo.
But yeah. Sorry. And did you give social handles if you?
Oh yes, I am on Instagram. Is if you want to follow me, I'm VMINSKY, so like Minsky, and then it's Women of Wine DC on Instagram. I don't really do anything else. I think my threads is all the same. So follow along in my misadventures in wine. I think it's probably at this point. And I don't know. I get to go out to eat all the time because that's what we do for a living. So, and I dog sit all my friends' dogs. So you'll probably see some cute dog pictures on there.
Yeah, it's a great Instagram to follow.
Joy.
Yeah. Meanwhile, Sam, where can people find and follow you?
Well, they can, of course, find me here every time we have an episode, and they can find me occasionally on our Discord if I remember that it exists. But other than that, I am busy trying to sail back home to stop a bunch of men from marrying my wife. So not sure when that's going to happen, but if you've got any complaints, for instance, you're a huge Orlando Bloom fan and you're very mad that I didn't want him to speak, you find Kate at.
You can find me at most of the places that have the @ symbols at Case Aiken. The exception to that rule is Instagram, where I go by Quetzalcoatl5 because God damn it, was I pretentious in high school. Like, Jesus. Like,
you can change your handle.
I know, but I'm not going to because it was my AIM screen name. Like, it was my AIM screen name from high school. I'm holding on to it for dear goddamn life.
But that's fine. Accept who you are, and no one can ever use it against you.
I'm just
Game
explaining
of Thrones.
why it was that at the time. It's my AIM screen name that I'm holding on to. That part's not changing.
Sam, if you need a friend for your odyssey to go back to your wife, just know I'll be there with you. I'll bring wine.
Thank you so much.
We'll bribe Cersei with the wine.
We probably will need it. Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Yeah.
And then Case can handle all the complaints like his other handles.
Right.
About
we'll be on a boat. Yeah, maybe we can take a plane. I have some friends.
That sounds great.
Yeah, no, the advancements in Odysseys has really improved. I don't know. Somehow I could tie.
If there's not a VR game of the Odyssey yet, someone needs to plant that seed somewhere. That would be so rad.
I think the closest is probably Legend of Zelda Wind Waker.
Oh, such a good one.
But anyway, so you can find me at Case Aiken at most of those other places. You can find me on the Discord, which I don't forget exists, unlike Sam. And I would say is a pretty awesome place. Check out the Certain POV Discord. Yeah, you can find a link on our website or in the description of most of our episodes. Check it out. We are awesome and enjoy interacting with you. And if you message Sam, she will respond. I swear.
Not if you're talking about Orlando Bloom, though. I stand by my comments. You can all those complaints. Go to Case.
That is fair. But like I said, you can find a link to that Discord on our website where you can find tons of other great shows. We've got so many fun shows that we've been working with for so long. I'm going to shout out Books That Burn specifically at the moment. We're talking about a literary episode today, and it seems to make sense to shout them out. Books That Burn, awesome show where they look at books from the perspective of the characters being rational actors and being tormented by their authors and the trauma that they are being put through from that perspective. So it's
oh my gosh, what?
It's a fun perspective for literary analysis. So I would say definitely go check that one out. And yeah, otherwise circle back here. We have tons more episodes coming. Sam, what do we have next time?
Well, if you enjoyed this episode, that's great. But next time we'll be talking about Highlander 2, The Quickening. And until then, pass it on.
Thanks for listening to Certain Point of View's Another Pass podcast. Don't miss an episode. Just subscribe and review the show on iTunes. Just go to certainpov.com.
Another Pass is a Certain POV production. Our hosts are Sam Alisea and Case Aiken. The show is edited by Sophia Ricciardi. Our logo and episode art is by Case Aiken. Our intro theme is by Vinn, and our outro theme is by Matt Brogan.
CPOV. CertainPOV.com.